The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
What time is it?
I started to question myself if I was watching Lucha Underground and I had accidentally flipped over to Cinemax.
Not a whole lot of faces shown as far when it comes to Brenda, so
yeah,
you're spot on there, buddy.
This is the house that AJ Styles built.
Like Nakamura, he's just such a great star. It doesn't matter what you do with him, people are going to cheer for him.
Did you feel the gloriousness? Did you feel it? Bobby Roode did his job.
This is insane how great they are.
Well, I think the authors of pain are young prodigies.
That's how good we are, representing Bullet Club. This is what we do.
Super Kid Pate! Japan!
I mean, you debuted on Bound for Glory Sunday and a family of OVE. How did
Yeah, family.
And then
How's your family, Josh?
Well, thank you.
Are they good? Are they going to come?
Yeah.
They want to fight us too?
No, they don't want to fight you guys.
Is your family watching? Hi, Josh's family. Hi, Josh's family. How you doing? How you doing? Do you want to see him interview us? Ask us some questions for your family,
This
Josh.
is a little uncomfortable.
Good. Good.
Let's talk about 5150. Let's talk about the street fight. Let's talk about you. Was it homicide that you took out in the locker room Sunday night?
Did you watch your own product? Yes,
he was laying underneath a flag.
Yes, it was homicide.
So that was the game plan, take out homicide.
Why are you being so mean to him? Do you know I headbutted homicide one time and split him up in Philadelphia?
He's being so mean.
Hey, what do you think we'll do if we get in the ring if we get on national television? Okay, Josh?
Yeah, that's okay.
You want to give me a kiss?
No, we're good.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think we're good.
You're looking at me like you want to kiss me. Do you want to give me a kiss?
No, this is gotten uncomfortable.
Bye.
Bye, Jeff. OVE and Sami Callihan.
Ladies and gentlemen, wrestling to the max.
And your hosts, Gary Vaughan, Sean Garmer, and Paul Leazar.
Welcome everyone to Wrestling to the Max, episode 272, part 2. And we are brought to you by W2Mnet.com, the place where you go find all your great wrestling needs and a lot more in the world of wrestling. And don't forget to go hit that subscribe button, rate and review whenever you want to go find Wrestling to the Max. That's right, wherever you get your podcast from. Maybe it's iTunes, iHeartRadio, heck, even YouTube. Just go hit that subscribe button. We definitely appreciate it. Hey, and make sure you give some love over to 411mania.com and Last Word on ProWrestling.com. Both are awesome sites, and they do us some great news and support. You know, they really do help us out, so we appreciate them. Excuse me. And, yeah, that's pretty much all the big plugs, but I am your host, Gary Vaughan, and along with me is Mr. Paul Leazar.
Heyo.
And tonight we are not with Sean. He is off tonight. He's got some personal stuff he's dealing with. I know his car's been giving him some trouble and some other things in life, keeping him busy. So we're not going to bug him, so Sean, please, you're hearing this right now, man. Get things taken care of, and we're really, wishing for the best for you. I hate to hear the car stuff, man, because I'm dealing with a few car things. Luckily, the car is working, but I'm like, man, I got to put new brakes on. I've got to work on the front end. And they keep saying, "Oh, don't worry, it's only like a handful of money." I'm like, yeah, maybe I should work on it myself. So, and then that costs money still. I got to buy the parts. So I'm like, yeah. So Sean, I feel you, bro. Well, me and you are dealing with this kind of similar stuff here. So, on and on we go with life, though, right, Paul? I mean, we just got to move through it. So.
Yeah, you sure right, man. I'm doing. I'm still under the weather, so if I sound less than optimal, I blame colds.
It's funny that Colds are in a way undefeated, right? they just basically pin you for a while, get up from the pin, move on to the next opponent. You really never defeat them. You just kind of deal with them until they decide to leave.
Yeah,
so
till they're done squashing you.
Yeah. So sorry about that, Paul. Hopefully you do feel better. I know how that feels to being sick and all that stuff. When it comes to trying to do a podcast, just several times I'm sure our listeners are like, "Good God, Garrett, we remember those terrible nights where you're going, everybody." So I try not to do that too much, but hey, we all try to be a trooper, and Paul's being a trooper tonight and doing the show even though he's sick. So. But yeah, we've got lots of stuff to talk about, everyone. We're really, excited about the show tonight. We've got a ton of quick hits to talk about. They're not really giant quick hits, but there's little pieces of news that build up to a lot, and trust me, they flow very well. Trust me, there's just so much to get into. So we're going to talk quick hits. Plus, we're also going to be getting into this week's Impact Wrestling taping because it is the fallout of all that stuff at Bound for Glory. So I'm really looking forward to talking about. Yeah, I know, but I'm still looking forward to talking. Here, let me be honest. I'm looking forward to talking about it. I really, really am. I know a lot of people are like, really? But I do want to talk about the future of Impact and based on what we saw on this taping. So there's lots of discussion here. Trust me, people. It's not going to be all like we hate everything. It may be 75% that, but part of it won't be. So at least we're hoping so. Yeah. And also Superstar of the Week. So we've got a full show ahead of us. But before we jump into all that, we've got to talk this Ric Flair 30 for 30. I have to say, Paul, I got a chance to watch it. And I'm going to give you a quick story, too. I recorded it late. I didn't watch it live, and I don't watch any TV live. I'm sorry. I don't care. If you're not sports, I don't watch it live. So I didn't watch it live. I recorded it late because I had a bunch of other shows to DVR that night. I could push it off, a little while. And I turned on my DVR, and it is completely full of not Ric Flair. It was some horse race or something. I don't even know. ESPN, F you, because you screwed me over. I trusted you in your scheduling. So I am so glad that they have the Watch ESPN app because I was able to get on there and watch it at my leisure. But if it wouldn't have been for that, I would have been screwed. I'd have been like sitting here like, Paul, I watched it like 5 minutes ago. Let's do the podcast. So thank God that didn't happen. But I really did enjoy it. I was so glad I did watch it on the Watch ESPN app because I had to deal with all the extended commercials and all that. And it was really nice. It was kind of a fun journey for me to kind of watch this guy that I've not really idolized. I've always enjoyed Ric Flair. Never was a giant, mark for him, though. I think he's a great wrestler, and I enjoyed his persona. But, nonetheless, I sat there the entire time just kind of trying to figure out why he is who he is and all that, and they really showcase that very well. And you just have this guy, from what I got from him, as a tortured soul, a guy that had a lot of problems, maybe mentally and things like that growing up because of his family situation and being adopted. I'm sure didn't help either, and little things like that. So I think it's really interesting to follow his path through his career to where he had to go. There were some really deep valleys and all that stuff. So I'm really curious what you think. It was a great watch, though.
So I'm a huge fan of ESPN's 30 for 30 series. I haven't really watched one that said, man, that was just a waste of time or anything like that. They've all either been good to stupendous. And my favorite thing about them is that even though these are sports stories, is that there's usually always some underlying tale of them trying to tell you, I don't want to say life lessons, but, certain things that are relatable. One of my favorite 30 for 30s is the one about the Boston Red Sox coming down 4-1 to beat the Yankees, or 3-1, excuse me, to beat the Yankees and go on to win the World Series. It's just like this great underdog story. This is very much sort of like a warning about fame and what it can do to you, because I know by the time at least I got into wrestling, and I believe you as well, Gary, I don't want to speak for you too much, but we were certainly past Ric Flair's prime, right? Ric Flair was like the king of the 80s and well into the early 90s, I think some would argue as well. But come around like 97, 98, going on through the rest of his career is very much just it's not sad Ric Flair, but it's definitely a Ric Flair who is not what he used to be. And I think this chronicles, one, the rise of the wrestling scene during the 80s very well, and how just excessive a lot of it got during that time frame, which is just basically the 80s in a nutshell. But
yeah.
I just watching Rick talk about all the stuff he went through and all the things he did during that time that outside of the ring were just insane. It's rock star levels of bad. You know, you hear all these great stories and you're like, man, that's really cool. But I mean, he even says it himself. He's surprised he lived to this day, Gary.
Yeah, especially after, you had Jim Ross talking about how many kamikazes he ordered, like 130.
Yeah.
Some crazy amount of kamikazes. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm not a heavy drinker, but I do partake, and I think, 4 kamikazes may make me start to not consume anything else, right?
Right.
So, I remember one time I just had a couple and I was like, whoa, I should have not done that. So, I mean, basically this guy, spent a lot of time in the party scene. Mm-hmm. He didn't buy all those drinks for himself, but he was obviously trying to keep everyone in the room with him and keep them happy enough to stay in the party that he created. And I think that was most of his life. And I think the wrestling business, because he was so athletic and he had so much charisma, he kept all that stuff in line. The wrestling was the easy part. I think the party scene was a harder part for him because he put invested a lot into being the man, portraying that guy that he did on TV and in the ring and all that stuff. He really wanted that to come out true, and he lived it like his first wife has said. I mean, he became Ric Flair. He was no longer the man that she had married, and that's a lot of it's a lot of interesting information here because of the fact that you kind of see that this guy covered up who he really was because he was unhappy with himself, right? Mm-hmm. And I really never thought about that. I ain't sure you can kind of get pieces of that by learning about Ric Flair, but you really never got the full gist of that until I watched this, and you really understood. He really does not like that guy. He doesn't want to be that guy. He doesn't want to be around that guy. Mm-hmm. And that guy, the reason it is because that guy hurts, I think. And so I'm sorry I'm getting all psychological, but it's just so cool to understand why Ric Flair is like he is. And he was and this is one thing, I'm kind of surprised that there's not going to be any heat, or maybe Ric Flair just knows that's the truth. But you have Triple H actually on this, and he basically says, Ric Flair is a consummate liar. Mm-hmm. And just honestly, and it's very honest with that. And several times during this 30 for 30, I thought to myself, oh, Rick says that, but is that true? Like, I get it. You want to maybe tell everybody you slept with 10,000 women, but did he really? You know what I mean? It brings up those. I get it. Yes, he probably slept with, 1,000 I could understand, but 10, that's a big number. And maybe he did. Was never there. But that's a lot of people. It's a fluctuating number. So who's to know? I'm not the judge. I'm just questioning. So I think there's lots of great things a part of this. It's a sad, I put on my Facebook, I said it's a tragic story about a great career.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The personal stuff, especially when he starts talking about his kids and they get into Reed and all that, which is just heartbreaking to watch. You could tell. I think that still haunts them to this very day. I'm sure as it does any parent that sees their child die young, but it's awful. Absolutely awful.
Yeah, and I think Rick understands, too, that, that whole thing with Reed was basically him just telling Reed, you're okay, don't worry about it. We'll get over this. That they say you're doing drugs. Let's just not believe that. Let's just keep telling ourselves it's a lie. And he just ignored a lot of the things that he did want to see. He didn't want to see his son a drug addict. He didn't want to see his son in a situation where he wasn't successful. Mm-hmm. So that caused more problems, and I think he understands that now later in life. And that's sad because it's too late. Just like the time with his kids, it's too late to get back. And, it's always interesting to me because, we have, all his kids involved in here. Even David Flair, who, my God, doesn't look like David Flair.
Right.
Oh, my God. What the heck happened? But, you have all his kids. But, the one I think a lot of people pay attention is Ashley Flair, which is Charlotte Flair. And I think what's interesting, even in this 30 for 30, she says that her wrestling career is not even about Rick. It's about her brother, which we all know that by interviews, but it's still, if you never knew that, she comes out and says it again, it's not about her dad. Like her legendary dad, a guy, a 16-time world champion, a guy that's done everything under the sun in the business of wrestling, and she is attributing her wrestling career to her brother, who had very minimal success in the wrestling world. So it shows you right there that there is some disconnect with him and his kids to an extent, even though she loves her dad. It's not about him. So it's a story that I think if you have not watched, you need to go watch this 30 for 30. It's great. Like Paul said, none of these 30 for 30s are bad. They're all great. I love the one that they did over the strike year for the NFL. That was really interesting. So, I mean, they do lots of great ones, but I think, once again, a great watch, something that I think, you don't have to be a wrestling fan to enjoy. You really don't. It's just an interesting story. So, but yeah, I mean, is there anything else you wanted to mention about it? I didn't want to just cut you off or cut you too short here.
No, just, go watch it. It's terrific. And just watch most of the 30 for 30s. They're great too.
For sure. That is true. Alrighty, well, we are going to jump into some wrestling news next, so hold your hats. We are doing quick hits.
It's time for wrestling news. Quick hits.
Go for it, Gary.
All right, let's start this thing off with the rumor mill. I know, we like to do that a lot lately. It's kind of funny. It seems like every time I start one of these things, it's always like, there's a rumor. Let's pay attention. What's going on? Well, that's what, sometimes happens in the world of wrestling.
Unfortunately, that is how wrestling news works.
Yeah, I know. I just feel like I'm saying it way too often. So instead of quick hits, rumor hits. Anyway, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens had to come home early from their European tour, and there's some speculation it wasn't because of any emergency, family stuff. It was just because the company decided to send them home. And the big part about this is there's a lot of talk about the fact that they may have been going into business for themselves. We just saw that SmackDown match between Kofi Kingston and Sami Zayn, and the fact that they wanted the New Day to stand tall and beat down Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn following that match. But that's not what Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens had in mind. They rolled out of the ring and walked away, which was not in the script. That was not what WWE wanted to show. And so they really are not happy with these guys doing that type of act and, not following along with the script. So they sent them home early. And, I mean, once again, it's rumor, but this is interesting, Paul. Now, we also have to note that there's been a lot of changes in WWE, and there's people leaving. We have Neville leave, and we also had Jimmy Jacobs fired. And both of those guys are really good friends with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. So do you think it's part of that? What do you think's going on with these guys?
Unfortunately, all the things that are being reported aren't consistent, which is usually something I look for going through news. And if it's consistent, I'm usually more willing to say this is probably at least 70% correct, right? I mean, you can never know for sure in wrestling, which is where the earlier comments were about. I think it'd be hard to say that I think a lot of the guys who are big on the independents are having some trouble, or don't have any trouble transferring over to WWE. I think you see it often. I mean, it's 3/4 of the reason why I think NXT is the way it is. I would tend to believe the earlier part, because Kevin Owens and especially Sami have been sort of, I don't want to say forgotten, but they've definitely, not been featured very prominently on cards, right? And you could argue Kevin to a certain degree, right? He had the U.S. title run and all that in the feud with AJ and everything. Sami's sort of been, I guess, just left to the outside. And I don't know if they decided that pairing them up and going forward like this would be best for themselves, which I'm sure they did. It's a great story, but I mean, when you put two friends like this together and they're sort of, I guess, either feel comfortable enough or willing to go out and do this, I think it just says something about where they want to be on the card. I'm sure they're unhappy that their friends are leaving the company, and you hear, it's not exactly roses in the WWE locker room from all the stuff we're hearing right now, right? People leaving, people getting upset with pay, and tons of other stuff that were like, we can just go back to the indies and do much better and be happy. Owens and Zayn, however, seem like professionals to me. Like 100% of the time, whether they're pissed off or not. I don't know how much of this is believable, but they obviously got sent home for something, and most of the stuff does point to them going into business for themselves, quote unquote. So there's gotta be more to the story. This seems out of character for them,
It really does, and you're right. They are very professional, and you've seen Kevin Owens in some of his interviews, and different things that you kind of follow him with, and the guy is a family man. He loves his family. He's going to take care of them. He does, I bet, a lot of the things he does to make his family proud and happy, and I think, sure, he's got to make the calls that, make him happy in his own career. But on the other side, you know that he is watching out for, his best interest and his family's best interest. So I don't see him totally trying to screw up his thing with WWE just so he can go hop back on the indie circuit and make money, week to week or however he's going to do it next. And I think that, that's going to come in a lot of play. Sami Zayn also doesn't seem like a guy to make knee-jerk reactions like that. He seems like he's a more methodical guy, too. So I think maybe they did do something that affected, the morale of the people above them working, whether it be Vince McMahon or the agents that are in charge on that tour or whoever is in charge. May have just thought, that's not cool. Y'all just get out of here. Y'all can go home. Something like that. Who knows? But what I do know is I think there is some, like you said, some truth to this. I think really these guys know, hey, if we don't stand up for ourselves, they're going to walk all over us. So let's let them know right now we're not thrilled. We're not happy. Maybe they can get the picture before it gets too bad. And maybe they'll be more willing to work with us if they can see that we're not happy, right? And do you think, because you just mentioned it, there's lots of different, situations in the locker room, if I can say it that way. Some of it is pay, like you're saying. Some of it's status. Some of it's just, why haven't I not even got to be on TV in 3 weeks? Those kind of things happen. Well, they've got to work through all this, but with all the chaos, you don't need some of your bigger talent, your top guys, to be in that same realm too. And you want them to be examples of the rest of the roster. Well, you got a guy like Kevin Owens who's been in a top spot. You don't want that to be the case either. So that's probably another reason they sent him home, for an example.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely, and I think the official word from WWE was like content unbecoming of its workers or something like that, so it could be any number of other things that they maybe did backstage or something like that too.
Well, very true. Maybe they just told Vince, he looked a little light in the arms or something like that. And, what are you kidding? I'm a muscle man. I whatever. Get out of here.
Go home.
Yeah, go home. So, it's interesting. We'll continue to follow this kind of story because we've got so many other guys, like we talked about, considering leaving the company or making those kind of decisions. And I just recently listened to Austin Aries on the Jericho podcast, and it was kind of funny to hear him kind of deny all the rumors that we had talked about on this show several times about him not happy with, not being on the WrestleMania DVD, not happy with this and that. And so he decided to, ask for his release. And he kind of pushed all that away and says, no, it was all me and WWE, we're best friends. We love each other. It just ended up, they just didn't need me right now. And I was like, man, it makes me wonder if you're just on this show to do a podcast that very well known and get your book out there. Because I was like, man, how could that not all? I don't know. I got to trust Austin Aries, whatever he wants to say, but it makes you wonder how much of that really is true.
Yeah, his Twitter definitely says something differently.
Yeah, and he even talks about his tweets and makes them out to be like, oh, I was, that's a work, that's a me kidding around. So
whatever you say, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever you say. And that's the way I feel about this, though. Yeah. I brought up the Austin Aries thing because of this, and we'll probably never know. I'm sure they'll say, oh, well, they did A, B, and C, which was little bitty tiny things, and really it was, something completely different. So we'll never probably really know until the shoot interviews come out. So let's go ahead and talk about something else that's going on with WWE. They have announced the 5th member of the Men's Survivor Series team for SmackDown. Apparently, Shane McMahon has decided it will be John Cena. What do you think about that one, Paul?
There were a lot of reports going around for a while saying that it might be Cena guest refereeing the world title versus Universal title match. That has apparently since flown out the window. And we got Cena on Team SmackDown, which he's a free agent. Like, how did this happen? I'm almost kind of mad that they just, it's here on .com. Here's Cena. He's on Blue Team. Let's move on. Like, there's a story to tell here. Let's dive in,
It really is agitating. I'm not going to lie. I really didn't like to hear this news, not because of John Cena. I think John Cena is a fine fit if it wasn't for what you just said, a free agent. A free agent means that this guy floats back and forth. Is it really in his best interest to choose a side?
Right.
No, because if you think about this, why would Monday Night Raw ever want him back? If he's going to choose SmackDown, why do they want to have him back? Sure, he's John Cena, whatever, but he's obviously trying to destroy your brand. So, it just blows my mind why they would act like that. I kind of wish it was something where Vince or someone else decided that it had to be John Cena and didn't give Shane a choice or something like that, compared to Shane's like, oh, I know. John Cena, and not only that, when they're a free agent, do they even have a contract? I'm talking kayfabe or not kayfabe.
Right.
I'm talking about in story. Do they have a contract? What do they say? Oh, Kurt Angle offered you this much money. I'm going to pay you more to come do this. That we don't even have that kind of stuff. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I know I'm being weird about this, Paul. It just does not fit. I think it would. If he was a full-time SmackDown guy. Maybe this is the bad side of having a guy like that be a free agent.
That's what bugs me, too, is that as far as the canon you have built up so far this year for the WWE, this doesn't really make sense. And it doesn't even have to be a big thing. Like, you could have left both spots open on the Survivor Series team all the way up to the last week for the go-homes, and have it be like a bidding war for Cena. SmackDown just happened to win out, and Raw has to fill out, and that's when Kurt Angle would have put Jason Jordan on there or something like that, So, I don't know. I felt like there was a better way to do this, but either way, you have Cena on the Blue Team, which I think probably swings things in a direction where you can probably guess who's going to win.
Yeah, it could definitely swing things, but you got Braun Strowman and Samoa Joe. Man, I still love my chances with those guys.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be kind of a fun ride to kind of see how this all shakes out. What we also have going on here, besides, John Cena joining up on SmackDown, we also got on 205 Live a possible new member of that roster, and that could be Hideo Itami.
Yeah, there's... This has been a long-held rumor, I guess since almost the end of last year. But obviously you have all the contract outs and everything like that, and these are starting to heat up again that he might be 205 Live bound, and it could be happening very soon. Which, I don't know if this makes people want to watch 205 or anything like that. But as far as the story goes of like maybe just trying to get the belt off of Enzo and sending in a Tommy to murder him, I could kind of get behind that.
Yeah, for sure. I think anybody's game for that, right? Oh, man. You know what? To me, it fits. It works. Hideo Itami's not doing anything on NXT. So why not get him onto the main roster if that's what their goal is eventually? And why not do it? Just go ahead and put him in place. And, you got a guy that's super athletic, got a lot of talent, and I think would fit just right in with the rest of the group. And to me, the 205 Live, or what do you want to call it, the cruiserweights, that's their best option to me, is to load it with super great talent. Give them guys that just really can blow you out of the water to make people want to watch that show.
Mm-hmm.
It's great when you have guys that, they're fun. You got Drew Gulak, who actually has a character that you may want to tune in for. You have a few other guys that are kind of fun, but really you got to have some guys on there that people are like, oh, man, I've got to see this guy again. I want to watch him again. Not, well, I've seen him once. I've seen him, twice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just, I love the idea of bigger names, guys with super big talent coming in and helping that roster.
I like it too, and I'm not saying that's not a bad thing. It's just I feel like the way they've booked 205 Live and really just sort of let them, the way they sort of perform, not really letting them go out and try to have these great matches all the time is almost hurting it. 'Cause, that's why people want to watch the show. Characters are great, and you certainly do need to build those, but if you have some of the best action on WWE TV every week, you're going to get people to watch. And while sometimes they do, it's not always a great statement, because Raw and SmackDown can sure put on some stinkers as far as wrestling action goes.
You're not lying. That is the truth. It's one of those things where you kind of have to have that yin and yang, and I understand that. And really, it's been a tough road for Hideo Itami, just in general. This guy can't get away from being injured. He then comes into NXT, and then they've already filled out the roster. They don't need him. Mm-hmm. And not to be ugly or to be, a jerk, but they've moved past him. They're done, really, with the whole Hideo Itami project. They've tried twice. Injuries took him away, so I think they felt like, well, we'll just throw him on the main roster when they want him, and apparently now they're considering it. So I just want to know, how this is going to shake out, because Hideo Itami, like I said, great talent, but if he doesn't work in 205 Live, really, I think his road back to Japan could be in the near future if he just does not work out there.
And maybe WWE sees that and is like, well, to get as much use out of him as we can, maybe we'll put him on 205 and see if that does anything for the show. Because you have to think this was not in anybody's plans, Hideo's and WWE, whenever they first brought him in. There's no way that this was the idea.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm right there with you. So, good luck to Hideo Itami. I really am excited about seeing his debut. I hope it works out right for him.
Yeah.
Something that may not be working right is the Bludgeon Brothers gimmick. We see it week in and week out on SmackDown. One of the worst things on SmackDown every week, if you ask me. But it's been there, and it's been something that at least I guess is at least a tidbit of good news, because I'm glad that Rowan and Harper are back. But the problem is that we have just now getting a chance to see guys like Eric Rowan and Luke Harper back on our TVs and back in front of us, and it's just not seeming to working out well. Well, now we have these guys showing up to house shows. They're not even using the gimmick, not even wearing the clothes, nothing like that. And you just kind of have the idea that possibly they could be giving up on the Bludgeon Brothers already. Maybe they'll just kind of have them as a regular tag team, which is the way I want them. I want them just back to who they are. But maybe. So what do you think about this? Do you think I'm just kind of crazy? Do you think they're going to keep the Bludgeon Brothers thing?
We don't know. This is the first time it's happened on the house show tour they've been on since they started bringing them out. So I'm not saying the ship has sailed yet, but and honest to God, I didn't have a problem with the gimmick. I have a problem with the name, because I feel like Bludgeon Brothers is just so early 1990s, made for kids. These guys beat people up, and so we'll call them the Bludgeon Brothers, right? It feels like Saturday morning cartoons. That's what I'm looking at here. It's just no. You got to give them some. If you're gonna have something like this, you got to give them a kind of a cool name, and they certainly failed on that front. And I'm not saying that's the whole reason why this failed. Maybe there's not a whole lot for them to do, or they can't think of anything, but I feel like them just sort of being creepy dudes would work out just fine, especially because they're both so good at it. So, I don't know. They've tried a lot with these guys, and nothing's really stuck. And that, That could be a problem.
It could be, and like you're saying, it's a super corny gimmick. You know, you made the reference towards, you know, other tag teams that kind of have some of the, you know, similar, you know, maybe a gimmick, even though it's not completely that. And, you know, some of those teams work out well. It looks good on them. But I think this just does not work out right with these guys. They don't have the voices to do it. They just don't talk well enough to kind of pull off a weird, you know, tough warrior Viking kind of thing, whatever they're trying to pull off here. I just feel like they are very creepy, and you just think about this. If you're standing across the grocery store with Luke Harper and he's staring you down, you'd probably walk right out. I'd be terrified. I'd walk right back out that door. And that's all you need. You don't need him having a cloak and all this hammer and all this stuff. And, you know, my wife always talks about, you know, one of the scariest horror movies she ever saw was The Hills of Eyes. Mm-hmm. And, you know, why The Hills of Eyes is so creepy is it's got blood and guts and all that. But, you know, the people look weird and they're strange and they kind of scare you. And I think that's what these guys can do. They don't even need all the other stuff. They just show up and just look terrifying. And, there's nothing wrong with what they already had. I get it, repackaging, doing all the stuff that really, you know, kind of makes the kids happy, but I just don't think it was working, and I really do hope that this is gone. If it doesn't mean it's the truth, then I'm going to be really sad to see these guys show up like that.
You know, I think the only reason they're trying the repackaging thing is just because they're trying to get them away from the Wyatt family sort of feel, because I don't think they want that connection to be there at all. And that might be the only reason why they were doing all this to begin with. So, I don't know. I feel like you maybe... There's something to this. I don't know. Rowan, for me, can't really do promos very well, but I think he has like the gruff look to pull off everything, and I'll watch Luke Harper do anything. So, I really think the name is what killed this, just right out the gate.
I understand. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's just for me personally. I mean, just the way I look at things. I just kind of look at it as, you know, Luke Harper is great for whatever he does. I just don't want to see him repackaged for the reason of I get you want to get away from the family, but he kind of did that already. We've seen that story. And not only that, I still think you need to have that door open just in case, because you've got Bray Wyatt doing nothing. Mm-hmm. Zilch. Nothing. And maybe that's the only way you get these guys back on track is just to put the Wyatt family back together or something. Something you may have to do even though they didn't want to do it. Unless they're really willing to go back and fix Bray Wyatt to where he can be back into a normalcy of terror and really be back to that guy that we kind of were interested in. Now we just don't have that. So I think you should open the door or leave it at least a little cracked for that to be possible, you know? Mm-hmm. So
that's fair.
You know, there's changes going around in WWE, but there's also changes going around in Impact. And, of course, you know, we're seeing lots of those changes go down. And, you know, what's interesting is we're hearing more come out from Impact that some of the higher-priced talent over there have been asked to take pay cuts again. We've heard this before. This is not the first time. It's a different regime. And even they want to kind of lower the contracts to some of these bigger higher priced talents, which could mean that we possibly get to see more releases coming up. And, you know, we've already got a few people leaving. We had Bram ask for his release. We also have, you know, a guy like James Storm doing his goodbyes at the house show tapings. So this seems like they're going to be in a big transition here.
A big transition. Because basically, I think anybody they've ever built into their mid card over the last 3 years is basically leaving. This is a fundamental shift of what a company is trying to do, right? Like, they've packed up shop, they're moving up north to Canada, and a lot of this makes sense, right? I'm sure a lot of these guys that are based here in the States don't want to fly to Canada every time they got to do tapings or anything like that, or something. So it just makes sense. They're losing money, apparently, which is where the people asking them to take lesser deals comes into play. And if those guys leave, then I'm sure Impact's just fine with that right now. It means they don't got to pay them. and maybe they feel like there's enough around Canada to where they can build up and completely sort of reshape the company into being a Canadian platform, which I don't see a giant problem with. It's just, if you like a lot of these people, they may not be there anymore, and that could change a lot of perception for the company.
So this is really interesting for the fact that they spend so much time saying we're going to be global, right? Mm-hmm. Now you're going to be Canadian, and primarily Canadian. So where does the global part come in? I mean, do they still have all these deals with AAA and Crash and work with Noah and everywhere else that they work with? Do they still do that stuff, or do they say, we've got to kind of slow things down? We're going to focus on these Canadian wrestlers, and we're just going to make it happen and see where we go from there? Because then you almost feel like, you've got to even change everything to more of the Canadian way. I don't know. I'm kind of curious. What do you think is going to happen with all that?
I mean, the GFW thing is basically done at this point, and they might just keep the titles and maybe shape some of that around it to fit their needs. But, I mean, we're talking about a company, I think, that's reverting back to just being Impact. No matter what they say going forward, I think that's what's happening here. So whether they're still global or not, it might make a nice front to make the name as far as the unifying deal between them and AAA and Crash and Noah. And obviously with Scott D'Amore around, you got Border City Wrestling also there in Canada. So there's a lot of ways for this to still go without you having to be global. And if they still want to show off matches from their other partners, I think that's great. It definitely makes them feel different, and especially with a roster in flux as such as it is, maybe that's for the best right now while they try to sort out what the hell they're going to do on their actual show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very true. And, it's kind of funny because of the fact that, like I said, they spend so much time with this global aspect and all that, but also for the many, many talents that have had trouble coming back and forth over the U.S. border. Mm-hmm. So it makes you really wonder and question, how their future is going to be affected by that as well, about what talents they can actually bring in and who they can't. And, how is that whole visa situation going to work if they do get some talents to come over from the U.S. or anywhere else and work for a period of time, Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It sounds very creepy to me. I love Canada and all, but I just kind of sounds so weird to think that this company could primarily be Canadian wrestlers and a completely different roster than what we're seeing now.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know who's going to stick around, I think is the feeling. If you've been a long-time Impact fan or a long-time watcher, I don't know if I would call myself a fan anymore, but, guys that you've either got some association with or really like a Johnny Impact or something like that, could maybe not be around sometime next year if they don't want to take lesser money, which can't really blame them, especially when they're making so much doing what they're doing already.
Yeah, I mean, I think a guy like EC3 that has really needed to go ahead and move on past Impact, I think this will be his opportunity if he wants to do that, So, I mean, it's going to be fun to kind of see how this thing shakes out, and if they keep, things together on some fronts and some not together on others. I want to kind of find out where guys like EC3 are going to go, where's Eddie Edwards going to go, people like that who, right now are making a big impact. I mean, you have guys like Evan Bourne who are kind of drifters. They go here, there, and everywhere. So not so concerned about guys like that, but guys that have been around this roster for a long time makes me curious, So, and you've also, people, have paid attention to us or anywhere else, you don't see the same referees in the ring. Everything's going to be so much different, coming in the future with Impact being in Canada. I'm really curious too to see when that comes to affecting their creative team and things like that. Not just the in-ring talent, but who's actually going to be working backstage with them if they're primarily in Canada, right? I mean, they're going to have people who are ready to move and take up residence in Canada from the U.S. That's another big thing you got to think about too. You got, a few people that you've known for a long, Scott D'Amore and other guys like that have worked there for a long time, who may make that decision to leave based on having to stay in Canada. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, funny bringing that up. The creative team right now is reportedly Scott D'Amore at the head, who is Canadian. He runs Border City Wrestling and all that. So him sticking around is probably just a given at this point. But you also have Sanjay Dutt and Abyss, and Gail Kim reportedly did some work with the women as far as putting together the match for what went down at Bound for Glory. So if that's your team right now, one of them is Canadian, not going anywhere. Abyss has been with the company for so long, he's probably pretty far entrenched that he'll go wherever. And, Sanjay is maybe sort of been in and out, but he seems pretty committed to the deal, so I don't know. I wouldn't think it would change all that much as far as those three go, and maybe Gail doing whatever was just a one-off, but you're right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that could change. I don't know if I would maybe consider the creative direction being one of them, though, at this point.
Yeah, I didn't know Scott D'Amore was Canadian. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It's so funny to find out who's Canadian. It's a game we should play. Who's Canadian? Kind of like when you watch Walking Dead. Who's a Brit? Oh, that's only about 75% of their cast. So. We'll continue to follow Impact. I mean, their situation is week to week. It's really
almost day to day at this point.
Yeah, but I don't want to be too discouraging.
Oops.
It's okay. Yes. Okay, so other things going on, but it's interesting, and you got to give Impact some credit for this. Mm-hmm. We just recently talked about Rockstar Spud having to leave the company because they did not get the right paperwork in order for him to get his visa to stay in the country. And so he had no way of making money here, so he had to leave. Well, we're finding out that Impact did put up $20,000 to try to sort this mess out, and we're not as successful. What have you heard about this, Paul?
Yeah, so Impact paid $20,000 to sort out everything that was wrong with Spud's visa issues. So they paid the money, they were able to fix it, they got him back into the country, and that's supposedly when they decided that it was time to part ways. Whether he asked for it or not seems to be sort of suspect to me at this time, because some say they just let him go and others say he asked for his release, so I don't know. However, it sort of has heated up the rumor mill more that his signing with the WWE is practically imminent at this point. So it has a happy ending for Spud at least, but Impact's out $20,000 for their goof.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that they would do it for a guy like Rockstar Spud, though. I know it was their fault. I get that. That's oops, they're bad. But for a company that's strapped for cash, that's a lot of cash to drop on one talent that doesn't seem to be your top guy.
Remember, they couldn't pay him for certain stuff he had already done because he wasn't he didn't have the visa. So maybe it's a way of sort of mitigating that. Plus, dude, we're bad. Please don't sue us.
Oh yeah. I totally get that part too. They have to do what they have to do. But hey, once again, it's a little bit surprised and kind of happy that they did that. Even though it was probably in their own best interest, lawsuits ensuing and all that kind of stuff. But I really never thought of them as this kind that would, put some money out there to help their talent.
Right.
So. What do you think about the Rockstar Spud going to WB thing, though? That's kind of interesting to me. That's an interesting part of that.
Yeah, I've talked about this, I think, a little bit with Harry on this week's episode of 205, just because I think Spud would be really great as sort of like Enzo's sidekick, honestly. I think that'd be really fun. But, you have to think 205 Live would be where he would end up. He's got the look for that. He has a gimmick. I think he's very good at playing characters, too. But what about you? Where do you think he ends up?
That your spot you're talking about is a great place for him. But if he does come, I could see it running NXT to where they see what they can get out of him, just to see, his personality, things like that. Although, like I've said in the past, he's not a bad ring announcer. He's a guy that could play that role, and someone pick on him, and he decides he's going to get in the ring and learn how to wrestle and fight. That'd be kind of a fun thing, kind of like what we did with Santino Marella. A random guy in the audience, oh, here he comes, and he becomes a big, superstar in WWE. So I would love to see that take place or something of the sorts. Rockstar Spud, like I've said many, many times, he's got such a great way about him. He's really entertaining. He's really funny when he wants to be. And very annoying when he wants to be as well. Mm-hmm. So I think he's got a lot going for him. I think that's one of the reasons why WWE would even consider him. So I really, really hope things work out for him. I think he's a super talent. And, man, I just really want to see if he does work with Enzo, how he's going to do that whole how you doing situation. I can't wait to see him just completely make that look terrible.
That's where the money's at right now.
Yeah. I'm sorry, folks. How are you doing? I just can't wait. It's going to be too much fun. So, super cool guy, though. I really love Rockstar Spud. And I think that's, once again, another sad loss for Impact. Mm-hmm. There's lots of different things going on with all that situation. And, we'll have to continue to follow and see where we go with all that. But some other stuff that we got going on, and there's, like I said, so many different places and pieces of the puzzle that we have to find out what things. But one thing that we do know that's kind of cool is we got Stephen Amell apparently going to be coming to a show in San Antonio. That's right. He is going to be at a Ring of Honor show out there. I mean, that's really neat, Paul. I mean, I didn't know he'd be interested in going out there for Ring of Honor.
This is kind of a cool deal. One, Stephen Amell and Cody have become pretty good friends since the feud on WWE. Amell, I think, has leveraged this into allowing Cody to come on to Arrow, which, of course, is still running right now. The really neat thing about this, though, is that November 17th, Ring of Honor and NXT are in the same area. Literally, I think, different sides of town running shows basically at the same time, trying to get people to come to these shows. And this is obviously the day before TakeOver. And this is also where you have Shawn Michaels guest refereeing the NXT title match. Well, Ring of Honor has brought in Kenny Omega and now Stephen Amell. So, San Antonio is the place to be November 17th if you're a wrestling fan, is all I can say right now, folks.
Jeez, yeah, that's going to be awesome. Wow. And, and it's kind of cool, too, because, I really didn't think that, those guys I think they were close, but I didn't think, man, that Stephen Amell was like that, friendly with this guy, and so that's super cool. And I think that the fans are going to be getting a treat, just like you're saying here. So if you're an Arrow fan and you love this guy, go check him out. Make sure you go to that San Antonio Ring of Honor show. Kenny Omega recently said to Tokyo Sports that he was 100% sticking with New Japan. That's pretty bold there.
That is pretty bold. And it was kind of hurts without Sean being around, because I'd love to hear his point of view on this too. But it's Tokyo Sports tends to stay kayfabe as far as wrestling goes too. So whether this is just Kenny saying the right things right now or whatever, I don't know if the idea of him ever going to WWE is truly going to be off the table. But with stuff like what we've talked about over the last month, basically, with how, Neville's unhappy and walked out, and you have all these reports of guys that are coming from the indies not at all being happy with where they are in WWE, whether it's true or not, as we talked about with Austin Aries. I wonder if a lot of that has to do with maybe playing into the idea that Kenny might want to stick around Japan for a while and just see his career out there and make New Japan into basically, a competitor. I
mean, how could you blame him, though?
Yeah.
I mean, he's at the top of the world right now in New Japan. Mm-hmm. He's making good money. He's involved with the Bullet Club, which has, the Elite, which he's really invested in doing that show with the Elite, too, on YouTube. So he's actually really busy. He's got a lot of things going for him. And sure, he's exclusive to New Japan, but that doesn't mean the guy's not always going places and working shows. And keeping himself super busy. And not only that, I mean, at this point right now, being such a popular gaijin, I think that, he can change the game over there a little bit for them and also influence a lot of the U.S. and get them to start watching more New Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And why wouldn't you want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to be that centerpiece for a company to kind of draw everybody in? I mean, you got, I'll be honest with you, you got lots of money making in front of you because you have all the bargaining chips. No one else has them. You're the draw.
Right.
But, there's other great draws, don't get me wrong. But
yeah, exactly.
he's a giant draw, though, still. He's on the level of their most popular Japanese wrestlers like Okada and Naito. So you've got to give him that due diligence. And if he comes over to WWE, what's going to happen? They're going to water him down.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And he'll never be, he's not going to get to walk in the door and be like, oh, you're like the next John Cena. No, they will just say, hey, you're a great indie worker. We'll make sure you know that you're not like us.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they'll do. And I think Kenny Omega knows that. And I think he does have a little bit of hope that, he can make a big deal in WWE and come and make money and be on that worldwide platform. But I think right now he kind of feels like with streaming and all these other things that WWE doesn't have that hold on people anymore because people can still see my matches. You can watch a lot of free matches I do, and not only that, if you want to see everything, just go by New Japan World,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think the WWE has that grasp on people anymore where they like, oh, the only way you're going to get a chance to be seen everywhere is if you're with us. That's no longer the truth. And so Kenny Omega, I mean, I would love to see him in WWE, but I do not blame him at one bit if this is what he's going to do, and he is going to start to make a new path for the U.S. fans and fans from all around the world to start looking at New Japan as maybe their new number one.
The way I always try to look at things like this, and especially when it comes to your Kenny Omegas and your Young Bucks, is like you're working in IT, right? And you have a chance to get on board with this new exciting startup that could absolutely succeed or fail in a giant blaze of glory. Or you could go over to this other company where it's sort of guaranteed and safe and you'll have a job for a while and all these other things. And which do you want to do more? And the startup is always more exciting, right? I mean, because if it pays out, it's going to pay out. And I think that's sort of where Kenny is at right now, is if New Japan's American expansion succeeds, not only would he be responsible for blazing a trail as far as creating a sustainable New Japan product here stateside, but he would be just this legendary figure in both countries. And to me, it sounds so much nicer than just being a guy in WWE right now.
Well, especially with all the turmoil you see in WWE right now.
Mm-hmm.
You see your friends leaving, and you see people saying, I'm not happy with my pay, not happy with this, not real excited about this, and it just makes you start to think, you know what, I'm in a pretty darn good situation, and people like me over here. I'm making money, and I'm not having to deal with all the stress that those guys are dealing with. So,
do you think maybe the Chris Jericho deal maybe was one of the ways that Kenny sort of decided to stay now? Like the big things are happening, and people are coming to you now, essentially.
Well, what's funny is that could be a big part of it. It really, really could be. It also makes me wonder if. What's going on there is the fact that, you have a guy like Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega who kind of have, shared home, Winnipeg and all that. And they talked about, hey, we don't want to do something special. And Jericho said, look, WWE doesn't care about anything I want to do. Let's go someplace where they'll listen. And New Japan was the place they'll listen. And I think, that's a big part of it. But yeah, I think you're right. I think there is a lot of heed to people starting to come to him, right? I mean, because it's a situation where, honestly, you look back, and when we look back, I think 10 years, 20 years from now, we're going to say, Kenny Omega was that era, in wrestling. It will be like, back in the days when they had the territory days where there were some guys that didn't go to WWF, They didn't do that. Not everybody went over there, right? And those names were just as popular as anybody in WWF. I think that's where we're going to look back in 20 years. And Kenny Omega may never grace the doorstep of the WWE ever again. And I think we'll be talking about John Cena, Kenny Omega. So,
I think that's spot on.
So, but yeah, I mean, this is going to be really interesting. Oh, I'm telling you, man, I cannot wait till that match. Oh God! January 4th cannot get here fast enough. I can't even say it.
Yeah, if you don't have a big like red circle on your iPhone calendar or your Google Doc or whatever you cool kids are using these days, you need to put one there.
Oh God! I mean, Naito, my boy Naito, the guy I love more than and most of these other wrestlers, facing off against Okada.
He's going to get a big win, buddy. He's going to get a huge win.
God. And then I get a chance to see one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, which one of my favorite American wrestlers or Canadian, whatever. Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho is my top.
He's from. There's a great video.
He's from Canada.
Yeah, he's Canadian, but there's a great video of somebody saying, "Go back home or go back to wherever." He's like, "I'm from Winnipeg, you idiot."
I love it. I should have said, you tend to say America when you're an American. And I should have said North American. He's technically Canadian. So, sorry, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I really am. So, I'm working on my Canadian. I really dig Canada. I want to go up there and check it out. If anything ever crazy happens and I don't want to be a Texan, maybe that's the next place I hit up. So
WWE's looking at India. W2M's looking at Canada.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's just one of those things. I always kind of found it very intriguing, Canada. It just super intrigues me. But not only that, I'm already in my own country, Texas. Yeah. It's a nice country. We live in a beautiful one. One last thing before we get out of quick hits and, my Texas nationalism. Talking about Coachman. That's right. Jonathan Coachman from ESPN. Remember him? He used to work for WWF. Well, he no longer works for WWF or ESPN. He has left them. I haven't really heard a lot about this, Paul.
This just happened before we went on air, or before we went on air to tape, essentially. So this is kind of fresh. I saw this as I was doing one last skim through the news. It's official on Twitter, all that stuff, as far as what Coachman has came out and said. So he still was doing a lot of the WWE stuff on ESPN, and he said it felt like it was just time to move on, and he's got a bunch of other projects lined up. Do you think maybe he's coming to the network or something in that degree as far as WWE stuff goes? He mentioned a lot of projects.
He very well could be. And trust me, I would love to see him on that Raw 25th anniversary. Oh, that would be so much fun to have him back. To do a segment or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Man, but you're right. The network could be definitely something, even though they've really scrapped all their original programming and things like that. But they have not scrapped their ESPN type shows, right? I mean, they still have. I forget the name of what's the name of the show where they sit down with and Corey Graves and all that. Did they scrap that show? I thought they still had that. Of course, they don't have JBL there anymore.
Right.
But maybe that's the thing. Maybe they're going to come out with a new show like that with Coachman. Who knows?
Very possible.
But I think Coachman also is looking at ESPN. ESPN's making lots of cuts. They are just downsizing and downsizing. And I think he said to himself, look, I've got a good place here, but I just don't want to be the next one. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to go ahead and look in other areas, and I think he's found his way out, possibly. And maybe the writing was on the wall. Maybe they're going to let him go, too. So I think Coachman is probably going to go either work for the WWE in part-time, and I think he's going to be finding himself in some other network and working in the world of sports. So we're looking for him, maybe Fox Sports, or maybe he's going to a whole new place, it's kind of funny. The network sports are big, but they're not necessarily the only place these guys can go. I mean, there's, podcasts are the thing now, and you can make money if you're a big name doing them, right. And you can do a lot of other projects that you want to do. So maybe Coachman's in that realm. Maybe he's found another, set of things that make him happy. And if wrestling is still one of them, that's the good thing, is he can do both if he's not with ESPN.
Mm-hmm. Bring It to the Table was the show you were thinking of.
Thank you. Bring it to the table. And I haven't heard about that in a long time. Now that I was sitting here and say that, JBL being gone maybe affected it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. So
yeah, I think that's probably part of it. The last episode they did was in July, so
yeah. See, shows you right there. I really never watched those shows. I never really. You know what? And I love Table for Three, and I haven't watched Table for Three in quite a while. It just has not. I've watched more Ride Along than I have Table for Three.
Oh wow. I know. I've seen a few ride-along episodes. I've watched a lot of Table for Three. I actually really enjoy that, too. And I actually like the Superstar Inc. stories, just because tattoos are always kind of cool.
Yeah. I love tattoos, too. But my wife is like, don't get them. I'm like, come on. So, I'm glad I didn't get a tattoo.
Too, but my skin is just not great, so I feel like I'd wimp out.
I want to do it just to see, if my wife would be too pissed off. But I'm glad I didn't have that, inkling to go get a tattoo when I was in high school, because I'd have the Goldberg tattoo.
The tribal band.
I would have had the tribal band. You better be glad that I didn't have the guts to go do it then, because I thought, I don't want to do it. I didn't know. I couldn't make my mind up. And if I would have been more of a go-getter, I probably would have done it. And then probably would have regretted it right now, Paul. So
you might not be married right now if you had that.
Well, she may have married me until I showed her that, then she may have reconsidered. So, yeah. So, and I probably would get addicted to them. I can't lie. It's kind of like my coffee. I started out drinking a little coffee. Now I kind of love coffee. So just So tattoos would probably be one little one to a sleeve. So.
Yeah. That's usually how it goes.
I know. Oh, boy. So I'll try to stay away from that. But anyway, enough about Jonathan Coachman. We'll, hopefully see him pretty soon. We are going to be done with quick hits. We are now going to move on to something that I would like to say that we're going to enjoy, but I'm kind of curious if we are. We're going to talk some Impact Wrestling. So let's go ahead and get into this show, Paul, and kind of talk about this whole fallout of Bound for Glory.
Boy, they have a lot to do to make me try to enjoy the show again, Gary. If you didn't hear our review, it's over on part 1 over there on W2Mnet.com and all that other places.
And please, I'm going to apologize right there, Paul. I tried hard to be optimistic, to be kind, and it was too hard. And I found myself nodding off at times, just thinking about the show. So that shows you how bad that Bound for Glory was. So now I'll let you, Paul. Let's get into this and see if any of this interested you.
So the opening credits hit, and I'm filled with a sense of dread. And then here comes Borash and Matthews start us off. They're in the ring. They welcome us to the show. They talk about the card, all that good stuff. Very old school sort of feeling here. And then we get some highlights for Bound for Glory, which I kind of wish they just ignored. And then here comes Eli Drake and Chris Adonis. Drake, of course, is still your champion after Bound for Glory. Talks about how Johnny Impact had worked so hard for all these years and done all these different things to get ready, but he had to face Eli Drake, and he failed spectacularly. Doesn't care that Patron got involved in his business. Doesn't want to deal with him. All this other stuff, and then he starts saying he has the night off, and he doesn't even want to be here in Canada because it's just pure garbage. Here comes Petey Williams to stick up for the hometown, and wants to challenge him for the world title because he's never been a world champion, at least as far as Impact goes. And Drake accepts the challenge, but says it won't be denied because he's got the night off, and this, of course, leads to a big brawl where the numbers eventually take Williams down. What'd you think about this, Gary?
At first, I was wondering what was wrong with their mics. There was so much. I mean, you could hear all the echoing in the room. So I was like, what the heck? Did they fire the guys after Bound for Glory doing their audio?
Just got you and me back there trying to work the audio table.
It sounds like it. Honestly, it sounds like it. It's oh God. I mean, in times you could barely hear Petey Williams. At the beginning of when he started talking, you could barely hear it, and I was like, "Good Lord, what in the heck is going on?" But I mean, I'll leave that alone. Be happier. I actually do get what the direction they're going here. Mm-hmm. It makes sense, Petey Petey Williams taking up for the hometown. That's just a classic thing that you do in wrestling. Fine, no problem with that. What I did have a problem with, though, is when you got Morgan coming down there and you have a bad, I'm telling you, bad transition between those two. Did you notice how bad that was?
I don't think I did. Do you mean Adonis?
Adonis, I'm sorry, I said Morgan.
I was like Morgan. It's like I think I'd remember if Matt Morgan was suddenly back on the show.
This is how much I care about Adonis. I said Morgan. I'm sorry. I always put. I don't know why I always lump those two guys together. I've always have. Like, you know. But anyway, so Adonis, that transition between him and Petey Williams was bad. Like the kick that Petey Williams gave him, it was so slow. Mm-hmm. It was so slow. I was like, good Lord. I mean, you could have mailed that. But here is the thing. That kind of started out kind of weird. And then the rest of it was okay. You know, Petey Williams gets to stand tall and, you know, feel good about himself. That's fine. I really don't have a problem with the storyline. That's okay. Here's the thing I do have a problem with. I understand where you have Eli Drake not wanting to address Patron, right? I get that. But don't you think that Patron himself would want to have some kind of, you know, say, like, hey, you know, I did this to you and, you know, we should have a match or something like that. And I get for what happens later in the show why that didn't happen, but I still feel like it was a void. I kind of felt like there's something that should be here that's not here. And Eli Drake not addressing it, okay, I get it. He's there again. He thinks he's the best of all time, but I still feel like it should have been addressed somewhere, somehow. And one last thing on this. Do you ever get to a point where you're like, okay, I love you, Eli Drake, but sometimes you sound too much like The Rock?
Not really, because sometimes he'll start talking and he won't really draw me in, so I just kind of stop listening. So maybe that's where he starts trying to be The Rock, and I've never got to hear him really try to be The Rock.
It's interesting because I heard someone else say this the other day, and I thought I was the only one. And apparently, I think I could be completely wrong. I think someone said there was a connection between The Rock and him. Like either they talk to each other or something. But sometimes I kind of hear The Rock and him, and I'm like, oh boy, you know, take it back a little bit. Be Eli Drake. Don't take that so much. So I don't know. I mean, to me, this is just another way of making this Canadian company or something, because it's kind of funny. The first guy off the bat that hits the doorstep of the world title, besides, you know, Johnny Impact, is the Canadian.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. To me, this is basically a way to sort of shutter Eli Drake to the side while Impact and Patron were going to have their issues. Because I was very much expecting that to be the forefront of Impact after Bound for Glory, just because, you know, you screw the face out of the title, you got to address that first, and we'll get to however you want to sort out the championship later. And I mean, the crowd is super into Petey, so he feels like he could challenge, and you know, maybe that crowd can will him to a victory. And it's not like Eli came out of Bound for Glory looking super strong either, right? He had Adonis helping him the whole time, and the Patron put the nail in the coffin, so it's believable in that fact. But I mean, you're right. I kind of wish you had some Patron interaction here. But Eli said he didn't want to have anything to do with him, so I was like, oh, okay, well, that's fine, I guess. Honest to God, I didn't mind this. I wouldn't want to deal with Patron either. I mean, you see what happens on the news.
Oh, man. Oh, God. Sorry, Paige. That never happened, right?
No, that didn't happen. That's my bad.
Yeah, never happened. No. Liar. That man with the 3 H's told you that happened.
I believe whatever that guy says. So
yeah, exactly. Oh boy. So I mean, here's the thing, and I get Eli doesn't want to deal with him. No one else has a choice. Whatever. I guarantee you that, you know, after a big match, you know, the guy doesn't want to face the guy he just had a big match with. But sorry, there's a rebound match. Just like, you know, I'm sure AJ doesn't want to deal with Jinder anymore, and they probably won't have to deal with him. But or whatever. There's always that return thing, right?
Right.
Don't stop now. It seems like they're just like, hey, sorry, but we want to go in a completely different direction. So ignore the fact that, this happened. Let's just move on a different way. So enough about that. It's just to me still a little weird.
I get you. Johnny Impact arrives at the building. You have the official announcement here that Eli Drake will take on Petey Williams next week for the title. And then Jimmy Jacobs shows up for commentary for Matt Sydal taking on Sanjay Dutt, which gets a lot of time. 15 and a half minutes, excuse me. You have Dutt go up top, Sydal moves out of the way, and hits the shooting star press to get the victory. This was so long, and it didn't have a reason to be as long as it did. And I appreciate X Division guys getting time, don't get me wrong, but it never turned into anything super awesome, and I'm sitting here just sort of waiting for it to end, especially after the huge 5-minute commercial, it felt like. So I was just... It finally ends, and I don't want to say I'm happy about it, but it's just wow, it took that long? Come on.
No, I was happy about it. When that bell rung, I was thrilled, not that the match was bad, but, I mean, you're right, it did go way too long. I kind of felt the same way myself. After, I think they had 2 commercial breaks, I think, in between this match, I believe. I could be wrong. But I just remember it felt forever. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, are you kidding me? Why are they going this long? Because the match is not spectacular. It's an okay match.
Yeah.
These guys both work very well together. They've probably been in the ring together probably 75 times or more. But at the same point, this is not giving me a big story. This is just another match, and it doesn't really change anything, so I didn't have anything to be invested with in it. Mm-hmm. And then here I am dealing with it for a long period of time like I should care. So it was a problem. It really was for me. I didn't really appreciate, I guess in a way having to sit through a long show, match, just because, right? Because they needed to take up time, or just because you got 2 talented guys in the ring. I don't know. I think you're like you said. That's just the definition. Too long.
Yeah, too long. I think was my big. I don't have a problem with the work. I don't have a problem with X Division guys getting time. But if you're going to get time, make it mean something, right? And I don't know if it ever reached that point of it really justified getting 15 and a half minutes, but.
Yeah. Well, did Jimmy Jacobs help it at all for you? I mean, did he make any difference to keep you entertained through those 15 minutes?
I like Jimmy Jacobs. I've been a big fan of his work for a long time. I didn't hate him on commentary. I didn't think he was overly spectacular.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I asked, is because I felt like they may have added him here maybe to kind of, not because they knew the match was going to be super long or anything, but maybe to kind of see what they could add in with him. And I think he's fine, but once again, I mean, just don't know if he added a lot. Yeah. I don't know if he added so much to make me care.
I think that's a fair point. He was being Jimmy Jacobs, essentially. So if you like that, you'll probably like this, but it didn't. You're right. He wasn't really adding a whole lot to the whole anything here. It's just, here's Jimmy Jacobs, and he's talking, and we just got him from WWE. How great is that? So.
Yeah.
Just Impact, Rule 3 out of their playbook. So.
Yeah. I wanted to mention that, and I don't even know who said anything about that tonight, but I swear on the show, on Impact, they said, what does it take to be the next talent or something like that? And they're like, I get cut from WWE.
Yeah, that's it. In the post-match, EC3 shows up and congratulates Matt on his victory with a big whoopity-doo, which got me rolling. And says, Matt, you win matches and you get to these big occasions. You beat Lashley and you got a chance for the title. You failed there. You had a chance for the X Division title. You failed there. So, you're great. You just don't have that killer instinct. I'm EC3, though. I have the killer instinct. Maybe in another life, Matt, you could be reborn as a winner. And EC3 just being EC3 is what brought us all to the show. Because this was great.
Oh, yeah, and I can't tell you how thrilled I was to have him cut this promo because this is EC3 that I love.
Yeah.
This is the guy I've been missing forever now. Ever since Jeff Jarrett walked in the door of Impact, I completely lost that guy. That guy disappeared. He was in the hole. Mm-hmm. Now that Jarrett's gone and they're doing other things, maybe EC3 can showcase what he can do, and that's talk and really entertain. So I was super, super happy to see this. I think he did a very good job, and I kind of want to see what Matt Sydal has to say back. I want to see the retort.
Yeah, I think these guys can have some pretty good matches too. So I'm definitely going to stick around for that. Sorry, Foggy.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. They move on from there. We get this flashback, courtesy of the Global Force Network, or the Global Wrestling Network, or whatever it's called. A match from way back. Team Canada taking on Sanjay Dutt, Amazing Red, Hector Garza. It was fun. It's a nice trip down memory lane if you were around for that time. That's like Glory Days TNA almost is that time frame. So that was really nice. And then we got this match between Eddie Edwards and El Hijo del Fantasma for the GHC Championship, which of course is the top belt over there in Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan. This is really good. This is sort of what I was hoping that first match would have been. You get like a 10-minute sprint. It's really fun. Eddie Edwards hits the Boston Knee Party, follows up with the Die Hard Flosion to get the victory in about 9 minutes or so. More of this. This is great action. I understand you don't want a whole night of this, but this was just super fun.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about the match really quickly before I jump into that. I got to address the old clip from 2000, I think 4 or whatever.
I think it's 4.
Is it 4? Okay, so I like the idea that you're promoting your network, right? And you're promoting a big match and all that, but that's another thing that I think went a little too long. I think you should have shown clips or something like that and, said, hey, these are the things that you'll get a chance to see, remember this or remember that. And to me, it kind of drug on. And I thought, man, as fun as this is to watch, shouldn't I be focused on the new talent? Why am I watching this, especially if you want me to watch it on your network? So I maybe that's just me nitpicking, but I just thought, man, come on, this is going on forever. Let's move on to the next thing. So, but yeah, besides that, I have to say that this match that they gave us between Eddie Edwards and Ishimori, right?
No, this is El Hijo del Fantasma.
El Hijo del Fantasma.
For those who are Lucha fans.
See, I'm foggy now. I'm thinking of last week, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, see, it was last week, Ishimori. I don't know why I'm thinking. Yes, Fantasma is the way. So, I you know why I loved this, Paul? Before it even started, it felt like a big fight. Mm-hmm. It felt very important. It felt like something that, we should care about. They started off the right way, the way they presented the title, all that kind of stuff. It worked out right. And then the match itself, both of them, super talented. I mean, you got to love everything that these guys gave you in that match. And I was really happy to see it. I mean, to me, like, we had talked about earlier, there was matches that were here that were just kind of, whatever. But this was super special. So I appreciated it. I'm glad we got this one.
Yeah, me too. More of this would be great, and it's a great way to make in-house content while showing off your relationships too, right? You got a AAA guy, you got a guy who's currently a champion over in Noah who works for your company. Just crushed it. This is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We get some highlights of American Top Team's win at Bound for Glory, which we'll talk about more on that later. OVE takes on this is the Chris brothers plus Sami Callihan. Squashing jobbers, Ray Steele, Phil Atlas, and Burke, less than 2 minutes. This was just, Sammy and company murdering people.
Yeah. I mean, it was good because, if you're an OVE fan or you love Sami Callihan, you're really happy. But outside of that, it's like a golf clap. Good job. That's about as much as I got for it.
Mm-hmm.
Still not sure about the OVE turning heel thing, though.
Yeah.
I it's just Did not work out for me at Bound for Glory, the double turn. I still question that, but okay, here we go.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk more about that as the weeks go on, too, but that was supposed to be a double turn at Bound for Glory, people. If you didn't get the memo, I don't think a lot of people did.
Yeah.
LAX, who's got Homicide back with him, come out and attack and run off OVE and Callahan and all that good stuff. So, Hakeem Zayn won Global Forge, Gary, which, let me tell you how much I really cared about this. Johnny Impact save us and just throws him to the side and is ready to fight Alberto Patron.
Oh, that was one of the better parts of Impact, I'll tell you, brother. Oh, God. That Global Forge thing is trash, and I've been saying it for weeks, and I'm tired of watching Pizza Deliver Boys try to be wrestlers. Here we go again. Good God. The guy, hey, he probably works very hard. I hope he does something good, but until, he shows me that, I mean, just give me my soft serve ice cream, and then I'll whatever else, so... That's why they all look like. They all look like they worked at Dairy Queen or a Pizza Hut or somewhere. All these guys, I just don't. It blows my mind.
We move to Border City Wrestling as we get to see Allie take on Casey Spinelli. Allie ends up getting the victory here. A little north of 7 minutes. Death Valley Driver puts her away. This was fine. Once again, it's really cool to see matches taking place in all these partner promotions and all that, and it was an enjoyable, brisk little match here. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, what do I always say? What's my number one rule? As long as Allie comes away smiling like it's Christmas morning, everything is right in the world. So, I think this worked out fine.
Yeah,
I think it really did, and it's good to see Allie, get victories like this. They got to start building her up as, a wrestler, especially if they want her to go and do other things and be a big part of these kind of situations where she's going on tour and having matches with other people that are viable champions. So I'm okay with it. I think it worked out right for her.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Alberto shows up to the building. He's ready to fight Johnny Impact too. Allie gets a promo talking about how she was real happy about the win they just showed and says that Gail Kim has a big announcement next week. And then we learned that also happening next week, LAX and Homicide are going to take on Callahan and OVE and, of course, all the other stuff they just mentioned as well throughout the evening. And that brings us to the big main event segment, Gary. Johnny Impact and Alberto Patron get into a big old brawl backstage. They're in catering. Basically, they're fighting all over the building. It's crazy pandemonium, and it's 20 minutes long, Gary. Patron ends up standing tall at the end after they end up back in the ring and hits a big hanging arm bar and all this other stuff to keep Impact down. But this was a chore.
This was not good. And way too long. And I know that I've already said that about one other part of this show, but this was way too long. And okay, I get it. Backstage stuff is kind of fun to see. I love backstage brawls. I'm a big fan. Trust me. I loved it in the Attitude Era. I love, seeing it different times, different places, but not like this. Like, I think they were really trying to go for, these guys are going to kill each other. They're just tearing each other apart. I'll say this. Later in it, it got a little better. I think they started getting more aggressive. I liked a few spots. I like when Patron throws Nitro to that door and he flies in like the bathroom or wherever that was. And then I kind of like Patron going on top of that building and, you have one of the best, what do you call it? Core park where they run to the parks and they run everywhere.
Parkour,
yeah. one of the best guys at that, a professional, so he can just run up a Coke machine and get on top of a building. So that was kind of cool to see. So there's a few moments here that I didn't have such a problem with. But dear God, it just took forever. The stuff in the ring I could care less about. I was not enthused. I really wasn't. I really don't need to see these guys in a match now. I just don't.
It definitely feels that way. Because, they pretty much got all their aggression out here. They fought for 20 minutes. Like, you can't be super angry at each other anymore, especially after some of the stuff they did in this, too. So, I don't know. It doesn't help that I'm only interested in about half the equation here because I am a fan of Johnny Impact. But I don't care to see Patron in anything. And clearly he's being positioned to be the guy who looks like he's going to get the belt back. So, I don't know. I don't know, Gary, but I'm not super thrilled with a lot of what they're doing on this show now.
I'm not either. And I feel like an old, jerk sitting here saying all that. I really do. Like, I'm a grumpy Joe, and I want to get all over, Impact and say nasty things. It's not the case. You just mentioned one of them. Johnny Impact's a great talent. EC3. There's some guys on this roster, even the gals, that you're just like, man, they could do so much. Mm-hmm. But yet, here we are, and, the situation looks more bleak than it does happy and in a good light. So we'll have to kind of follow this, but I have my concerns and worries, and I was really wanting to find out the fallout of Bound for Glory. And so far, it seems like the transition has come and literally fallen out of Bound for Glory onto this show. Mm-hmm. And for the few good things there was more, I think, rough things. So, of course, lots of video packages, too.
Lots of video. They're telling their stories here, though. We'll be back around next week, of course, but this was definitely a better book show, I will say, as far as what we got at Bound for Glory. It's just there are some overly long segments that don't require that kind of time. Yeah,
that's very, very true. So, well, there you go. That is Impact, and we'll hopefully, have a lot better and more positive things to say when we cover this next week. Mm-hmm. Let's move on, though. We got one thing left to do tonight, and that is crown a Superstar of the Week.
Superstar of the Week.
Go for it, Gary.
All right. Well, we have a really fun list because we had some big matches this past week. So we're going to start this thing out by giving a point to Cesaro and Sheamus, the Bar.
Yeah, really fun main event on Raw this week against The Shield with the tag titles up for grabs. And due to some New Day interference and some progression towards Survivor Series, they come out your new tag team champions. They will now face the Usos at Survivor Series, which is sure to still be a great match.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to that one for sure. 2 points are going to be heading over to Marty Scurll.
Yeah, Marty Scurll and Will Ospreay have a great match at Power Struggle. No surprises there. Scurll gets the surprising victory and is now your IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion. So we got to take our hats off to that as well. And just Power Struggle in general. What a great show. Guys, if you haven't watched that yet, go do it.
Yeah, for sure. We got 3 points going to a guy that honestly most weeks would get number 5, but this week he gets 3. AJ Styles.
Yeah, AJ wins the title back from Jinder in a surprisingly great match on SmackDown this week. Jinder, we should have talked about this a little. What were you like? This might have been Jinder's best match of his entire career, Gary. But AJ comes away with the title, gets the 3 points. Hats off to him.
And it needed to be one of his best matches of his career because his career may be on the line.
It's true.
So, I think, of course, Vince is one of those guys. Good job, kid. Get those roids in. But, slap you on the hand. No, bad boy. Good job, kid. That's something he's going to have to deal with, and it's going to take some time from him, and that kind of sucks. But outside of that, I think Mahal did fine. I didn't really have any, bad things to say about that per se. But, yeah, at least it was a great effort, and it put a lot into it, and I was really happy to see that. Mm-hmm. So... But yeah, I mean, we got 4 points going over to another big star, and make sure I read my notes right because I almost said the wrong name. It is going to Kenny Omega. I almost said Viper. Kenny Omega.
Oh man, Kenny Omega defends the U.S. title over there on that Power Struggle show against a very game Beretta, really giving him a great standout performance to move on with, and Kenny looks great. And, of course, gets challenged to a match at Wrestle Kingdom by Chris Jericho, of all people. It's hashtag Alpha versus Omega, Gary, or as they like to say, Best in Winnipeg.
And boy, I have a hashtag for it, but it's a little R-rated. Let's just say hashtag aroused. There you go. That's not so R-rated, right? So I am too excited about that match. I'm telling you right now.
I think you found a clip for an intro if you ever need one, though.
I think I may have to cut that one up and put it in. Oh, boy. So, and if you love any of these lines, tell us, people, send us that, and make sure you hit us up. We'll definitely find those in the intro. And, of course, now we have to give those 5 points out and crown a superstar of the week, and that person is Tanahashi.
Yeah, Hiroshi Tanahashi defends the IWGP Intercontinental title successfully against Kota Ibushi, and one of the best matches of the year, and certainly might be in the running for match of the year if it wasn't for Okada and Omega breaking the scale. However, he does get 5 points here. He will face Jay White at Wrestle Kingdom, who made his grand reveal as the Switchblade to challenge. So, boy, me and Sean also reviewed that show over on Part 1. So if you haven't heard that, definitely go listen to that. Me and Sean break everything down, really give our feelings on everything. But Tanahashi gets 5 points here. Well-deserved. Hats off to him. He is our superstar of the week, Gary.
Yeah, for sure. I'm very well-deserved. So congratulations, Tanahashi, for sure. But there you go. That is our show for tonight. We've had a lot of fun. Lots of crazy stuff to talk about, trust me, and a few disparaging things, but I think, that's the only way we get our therapy is to talk them out. So
that's true.
Here I am. Otherwise, I'd be a miserable, miserable man. But here we are, guys, and we want to make sure you don't forget to go check out W2Mnet.com, the place where you get all your great wrestling needs and a lot more. Make sure you go hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts. Hey, if it's iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, or even YouTube, make sure you go hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to go rate and review. We appreciate all of you that have already done that. Big love over to FormalMania.com and Last Word on ProWrestling.com. Both great supporters of our show. We want to support them. And yes, we have another great week of shows coming your way next week. We'll definitely be getting into part 1 of episode 273, talking Ring of Honor and news and a lot more stuff that you are not going to want to miss out on. And plus, part 2 will have a lot of other great content, just like you heard tonight. So make sure you go check those shows out. I'm really excited about next week and everything that will be taking place. And don't forget to go check out all the other great shows on the network. I'm just telling you now, if you're looking for a wrestling podcast and you're hearing us and you're like, I wonder what else is out there. Like I said, go check out all the other ones. There's Wrestling Unwrapped. There's the Running Wild podcast. There's so many on our network, the W2M network, if you haven't heard about that. Make sure you go subscribe there too, because if you don't want just us, you want a lot of other great wrestling content and other things, make sure you go to that and subscribe there. It's a great way to get all your needs when it comes to the world of wrestling. But yes, that's it for tonight. So we thank you once again for joining us. I am Gary Vaughan. He is Paul Leazar, and we will catch you guys down the road.
Have a good one, guys.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.